Well, thank you so very much, Dr. Jones, for joining us today. We are so excited to have an opportunity to have a conversation with you as it relates to our event for celebration of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. as well as Black History Month. So let me start with that. Thank you. Thank you much.
It's my pleasure.
I want to ask you a few questions. I want to ask you a few questions. So, as I mentioned to you previously, the focus of our event this year, African American veterans and the civil rights movement. For you, following your graduation from Columbia University, you were drafted into the United States Army in 1953, and you spent nearly 2 years at Fort Dix, from what I understand. And I would love to hear a little bit about your military experience, given our focus for today. What was it like for you as a Black man in 1953 in the United States Army?
Okay, good question. First of all, just to sort of set a little background, it was President Harry Truman, Executive Order 9981, I think. I may not have the exact. Anyway, it was July 1st, 1948, I think, when he actually desegregated the armed forces. Up until that time, the armed services of the United States were segregated. So I went in, I was drafted. At the time, they had something called universal, I forget what it's called, registration. Everybody over 18 had to register for the draft. And by a blip of circumstance, which I won't use valuable time, the circumstance, the draft board caught me between an interim before I had indicated with a certainty whether I was going to go on to graduate school after graduating from Columbia. So they snatched me, having for like a brief week lost my so-called student deferment status, and they drafted me. So I was drafted in the United States Army, whenever it was. August, I should remember, August 13th, 1953. And so, as I said, the Army was desegregated in 1948 by Harry Truman earlier. But even at that time, there were approximately, I would say the unit was about 50 to 55% so-called Negro or Black, maximum 60%, the balance were white in August 1953 when I went in.
Was that a fair and equitable environment, do you think, at that time for you?
Was it a fair and equitable environment?
Yes, sir.
Well, no, it wasn't fair in the sense that everybody had to register for the draft. And so that everybody who was not a student registered was eligible for the draft. So the overwhelming majority of people who were eligible for the draft were people who weren't in college, and that was overwhelming majority of Black persons and a substantial number of poor and lower middle class white people. That's what the armed services consisted of at that time.
So I'm sure that contributed to some of Dr. King's perspectives related to military. So I wanted to ask you a couple of questions related to Dr. King and your role as a draft speechwriter for Dr. King. I want to focus in specifically on that Vietnam speech. In this speech, Dr. King considered America to be the greatest somewhat source of violence in the world.
His words were the greatest purveyor of violence.
Yes. I switched the word a little bit.
Those were his exact words.
Yes, you're absolutely right. My apologies for that. And that, violence in the world, and concluded that war is a symptom of a deeper malady with the spirit of
that speech was a source of great controversy among his so-called kitchen cabinet. He had several advisors, including Andrew Young and Stanley Levison and myself and Clinton, people can, Harry Wachtel and others. I would say, and Andrew Young, of course, I would say Stanley Levison and I and Andy were probably the closest advisors among equals. Now, interestingly enough, is that we were divided. We were divided because we all were of the opinion that up through our experience, that Lyndon Johnson had been the greatest civil rights president in our lifetime. At the time, this discussion is taking place in April 1968, but this is after we have the 1964 Civil Rights Bill, the 1965 Voting Rights Bill. And so, that we were divided. In fact, so divided that I was the one that said that, I was the one that had to deal with the pressures coming from what I call the organized peace movement, whom I felt were trying to pull Dr. King front and center into the peace movement at a pace faster than he was at that time prepared to go. So I was sort of protecting him. In any event, we were not unanimous. So much so that we were divided as to what position he should take.
Let me ask you this: did your military experience influence your contributions to that space and even the creation of that speech in any way?
Oh, yes, absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, I reminded, I don't remember what other persons among the group had been in the military, but I reminded everybody, I said, the military is primarily, based on poor people who don't have the money to not be drafted. Okay. It's the mounting casualties. Let me just cut to the chase here and say, it's when we begin to have some questions about the casualty rates among African Americans versus the general population, and what tipped what tipped it over was that Dr. King got a call from, at that time, one of the highest ranking Black generals in the military. And he said to Dr. King, I want you to send one of your most trusted advisors. I think you should have this information. So he sent me. I went into the Pentagon. When I went into the Pentagon to see this top Black general, we walked into the room. He turned on the radio, gave me a yellow pad, and said, we cannot talk. Everything I'm going to show you is confidential, and everything we exchanged was by handwriting. And what he did was that he took from the files the classified killed and wounded ratio of casualties in Vietnam, and what it showed, that the Blacks constituting, I don't know, 12 to 14% of the population, of the wounded, we were experiencing anywhere from 30 to 35% wounded in Vietnam, and of the killed, we were experiencing anywhere like 22 to 25%. Well, when I took that, oh, by the way, he said to me, "Now I hope you have a good memory," because he wouldn't let me write down anything.
Wow.
You can take as long time as you want. You can even write things down if that's going to help you remember. Whatever you write, you can't take with you. So I immediately, as soon as I left his office, I ran across the street and sat down on a park bench and wrote down as much as I could remember as quickly as possible. And then I called Dr. King and I told him. And Dr. King said, well, tell me what happened. And I said, well, I can tell you some of the things what happened, but I just can't. I need to see you in person. No, he said, tell me. I said, no, Martin, I can't. Anyway, to make a long story short, we met. I think we met in Washington, D.C. But when I told him that, he jumped off his seat. He says, I knew it. I knew it. I knew it.
Wow.
It was startling. So you understand. I want you to understand clearly what I'm saying. African Americans constituting 12, maximum 14% of the population.
Yeah.
We were experiencing a 25 to 30% wounded. Okay. 30%, yeah, 30% wounded, and a 20 to 25% kill ratio.
Wow.
In Vietnam. When I told Martin that, he hit the ceiling.
Wow. Let me shift this just ever so slightly with the work that Riverside does and the community is focused on, of course, behavioral health. And the three most common mental health concerns for veterans are post-traumatic stress disorder, depression, traumatic brain injury. When you consider these types of mental health challenges and other things that come up in the behavioral health space, how can we be more supportive of specifically Black veterans today, given what you know many experienced
Well, what I
during
knew,
that window?
what we know today is that it's an all military, all voluntary service, right?
Yes.
It's not drafted conscription. And an all voluntary service, a high proportion to our proportion in the population are black men and women. Black men and women coming out of high school. Not only are they responding to the military that solicits them through recruitment, but many of them see this as an option of getting an education. So you have a significant number of Black people in our armed services today, as we having this conversation.
But if we think about those who were not given an option and they now may have, or over the years have experienced these types of challenges around mental health, do you think there are things we could put in place to be more supportive of veterans? Black
Please.
veterans? Any thoughts come to mind for you on that?
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. The thing that just breaks my heart out here every time I think of homelessness, whether it's in the state of California, New York, or wherever, or Cleveland, or Chicago, and so forth, I say to myself, I know that among those homeless, there's some veterans.
Yes.
I don't know how many. I don't know the statistic, but I know that among those homeless, they are veterans. And so, as I say here in Silicon Valley, it is it's the absolute highest form of immorality. Where I live is $1 trillion platform of wealth. As I say to the governor and the politicians, it's an oxymoron. How can you have all this wealth and people sleeping in the streets? It doesn't compute. And the reason you have it is because you have policies that permit it to happen. Now, let me make myself very clear. There would be no homelessness on the streets of our cities if the United States government did not want the homeless. Now, don't tell me that we sent $107 billion to Ukraine. I mean, that's a separate discussion. But don't tell me you're going to send money anywhere and you have sleeping on the streets. No. I don't want to hear it. I do not want to hear it.
Yeah.
I'm in my 92 years, I've become an irascible hawk. Okay. I don't want to see $1 of our domestic product go anywhere while there are many of them veterans sleeping on the streets of the cities. I don't want to hear anything. I don't want to hear any excuse. There's nothing you can say to me. I won't accept it.
And I think, Dr. Jones, you were speaking to a very important point. We definitely know that homelessness is it's everywhere now, and it's inclusive of veterans. I worked in that industry for a number of years, so you're spot on with your thought process of veterans being on the street, and our efforts have to be there to be more supportive. So thank you for that. I really do appreciate your perspective. I want to ask you a little bit more about your relationship with Dr. King. In 1962, Dr. King wrote a letter recommending you to the bar, and he stated, "Ever since I have known Mr. Jones, I have always seen him as a man of sound judgment, deep insights, and great dedication. I am also convinced that he is a man of great integrity." What was your friendship like with Dr. Martin Luther King Jr.?
Well, it was interesting, you know. I'm an only child. He had brothers. He was a member of the Atlanta middle class. My parents were domestic household servants. You know, my parents put me in a boarding school, although I wasn't an orphan. They put me in a boarding school for orphans and what we would call Native Americans. I was raised by Irish Catholic nuns from the age of 6 to 14, 10 and a half months a year, because my parents are too poor to keep me. And that was, now from I often look back, my, you talk about the love of a mother, particularly, to take her only son. I write about this in my memoir. To take her only son and to put me in a better place, a place that she knew would be better for me, although it was painful for me and had to be painful for her. So I want to use valuable time, but just to say, from the age of 6 until 14, 10 and a half months a year, I was raised by Irish nuns. And they said to us, if not every day, almost every other day, "Master Jones, be a good boy. We love you. Jesus loves you. And you are beautiful." You hear what I just said?
Yeah.
"Master Jones, we love you. Jesus loves you. Be a good boy. And you are beautiful." Now, just pause for a moment. Now, from 6 years old to 14 years old, 10 and a half months a year, when you transition to public school, you understand? I've been brainwashed. I actually thought I was beautiful.
You thought you were beautiful.
So when I went to public school, I thought I was beautiful. And I acted like I was beautiful. So I graduated public school, 70% white, 30% colored, Negro they were. Valedictorian of my class, president of the Honor Society, and voted most likely to succeed. 70% of my classmates were white. You hear what I'm saying? And I went on. I said, I mean, this stays with me today. Listen, I'm 92 years old.
Wow.
Okay? And I still think I'm the baddest thing walking the earth. I still think I'm beautiful.
I love it, Dr. Jones.
I love it. I still think that Jesus loves me.
Yes.
And I'm beautiful because I've been told that.
Yes.
And that serves me well.
Yeah.
Martin King said to me, "One of the things that I like about you, Clarence, is that you have balanced confidence." How do you get so confidence? I said, "I didn't have a Baptist preacher, but I had Irish nuns that told me just as much as your Baptist preacher told me. The Irish nuns told me that God loved me. I knew God loved me. God told me I was beautiful. So what do I care what some human being calls me? Some human calls me some nigger. What do I care? Somebody calls me some nigger or somebody. What does that care? I don't care.
Yeah.
Because the Lord,
you knew
beautiful thing walking the earth.
Yeah, yeah. And Dr. King clearly saw that and acknowledged that. And I appreciate that. I appreciate that thought process that you all were connected in that way, based on him knowing and seeing and identifying the goodness of who you are.
See, he had a conflicted, see, with respect to Lyndon Johnson, by the way, who was, you didn't ask me, but let me just tell you,
Okay.
in my lifetime, the greatest president by far,
Mm.
in my lifetime, okay? I don't care what no historian says.
Mm.
I lived it. I saw it.
Mm.
I saw his frailties. And I knew the only problem is that Lyndon Johnson forgot that Dr. King could count. Dr. King was smart.
Mm-hmm.
But he says, Brother Johnson is talking about he's going to do this and do that. He may want to do this, but he doesn't have the money because he's squandering all this money on the war. All right. As I said, we were divided. And in fact, he tasked me to write the first draft of what became his Time to Break the Silence.
Mm-hmm.
And because I didn't want to go all out against Johnson, I would say blah, 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 blah. But on the one hand, blah, 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 blah. I was back and forth, back and forth. When Dr. King got the speech, he says, Clarence, he said, you're my most trusted person. What is this on the one hand or on the other hand? I said, what do you mean? He says, brother, you should know the Vietnam War is either morally right or morally wrong. And particularly after we got this information about the killing, I love you like a brother. It's the only time, the only time in the history of my writing several drafts. Now, I had nothing to do with the sermons. I had nothing to do with anything he wrote in religious. It's the only time he ever rejected anything I wrote. Only one time.
Really? Wow.
He says, no, I got to deal with. I got to go and sit with Vincent Harding, who was the Mennonite minister.
Mm-hmm.
And so the two of them drafted this speech. And when they sent me the draft of the speech that they had wrote, I called them up and I said, do you really want to say this? Yeah, I want to say it. And so, with my parochial school training, I said, well, I want to change some of the way in which you say certain things. He had a sentence in there in which he says, the United States government is the greatest purveyor of violence in the world today.
Mm-hmm.
Now, he had that as what we call the first sentence of a paragraph, a topic sentence.
Mm-hmm.
Nuns taught me. I said, no. Let's take that sentence and put it in the middle of the paragraph, because that's a heavy thing to say. Okay. Yeah. The only time he ever rejected anything I wrote.
Wow. And that's why I appreciate you correcting me earlier in this conversation, because I did change that word and I shouldn't have changed it because that was a direct line from the speech. So I appreciate and respect and value your thoughtfulness in that way. So I appreciate that. Now, I could talk to you all day. I absolutely could, but I need to shift just a little bit and kind of wrap us up. I was given some information from your public relations team, and it's referencing what you're working on. And one of the quotes I read, it said, if the lion does not tell his story, the hunter will. You're working on your memoirs.
I'm working on my memoirs, really. The quote is from an African proverb that says, if the lions don't tell their stories, the hunters will get all the credit.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
So you're writing The Last of the Lions.
Last of the Lions.
What is one brief thing you are comfortable sharing with us about what you're writing and documenting that we will see soon, and hopefully I think you're doing in the fall, potentially having that come out?
Yeah, March.
Give us a you said March?
I'm sorry, March of 20.
Did you say it's going to be awesome? Can you give us a sneak peek into what we can expect to hear or read, rather, in your memoirs, just briefly?
Yes, one of the things I talk about is the differences between myself and Dr. King, but I also talk about he was very troubled, but courage beyond description. Sometimes I reflect on it. I don't know whether he was courage or he was crazy. But his courage came from, he had a religious he had a conviction deeply in his religion that almost to the point that some people would say he's crazy. He really thought that his God would protect him. He used to say, hey, don't, stop worrying about J. Edgar Hoover. Stop worrying about this and that. And nobody can protect me. Only my Lord Jesus Christ can protect me. You know, I know you mean well, but you know, when it's my time, it's my time. And he was the most, and now I was in the military. I've represented some Jews, you know, people walking around like I'm the baddest thing walking on the earth. You know, nobody put their finger on me. But let me tell you something. I have yet to meet a human being in my lifetime, 92 years of age. I have not met anybody either by a combination of craziness or religious conviction that had more courage than Martin Luther King Jr. He was personally afraid, but he had an internal mechanism that reconciled his fear.
Wow.
There's nothing that any man can do to me. There's nothing any man can do to me but to kill me.
Wow.
And to only expedite my return to my Lord. That's the way he could. So I looked at him, I said, is that a religious conviction? Are you crazy, Martin? That's the way I always talk to him.
Oh, wow.
So I think, you know, I think that the good Lord has blessed me with longevity. He has not wasted his longevity on me. And the reason, you know, aside from, I mean, there's James Lawson. Yeah, he's alive, but the people who were close to Martin King, only Andy Young, Bernard Lafayette, Jesse Jackson Sr., and Harry Belafonte, who's sort of like sick around the clock.
Mm-hmm.
We were the people who were most close to him.
Mm-hmm.
And of those people who are surviving, you talk to Andy Young, you talk to Bernard Lafayette, you ask them, what was Dr. King's relationship with Clarence Jones? You ask them, they'll tell you.
Mm-hmm.
I know. So I think that I've been here for a purpose.
Mm-hmm.
My purpose is to tell the story. Somebody's got to tell the story. And trust me, I have told the story.
Wow. The Last of the Lions. I am looking forward to reading your memoirs, Dr. Jones. I want to say thank you. I really do appreciate the opportunity to talk to you. And I look forward to all that you're going to share in that work. And I think it's going to be something that is of value to so many people to get a greater glimpse into Dr. King's life and you and your experiences and your journey. 93 years long.
Let me just say something in the interest of time.
Yeah.
Dr. Crutchfield, if he were alive today, he would do like me. He would start to cry. Because I look at you and I say to myself, my, oh my, if he could, if Martin King were alive and had the blessing and opportunity to meet and talk to people of your generation, as I have, there must be a reason I've been alive, than even just to witness people of your generation. There's more than one Angela Crutchfield out there. Okay, I don't know them all. Yeah. And Martin never had a chance to know them, but I'm here for a reason. And you and your generation give me a gift that I don't deserve to have alone. I wish I had a gift that I could share with him, but I can't. I can't, he's gone. But thank you on his behalf. Thank you for being who you are. Thank you so much.
Oh, wow. Thank you so much, Dr. Jones. I appreciate you being with us today.
Thank you.